Hey folks, welcome to the Wealth Transfer with TC. Today I'm going to be giving you guys a update on Zion Oil and Gas. Now many of you already know that Zion Oil a couple days ago put out a operational update, and I'm going to go over the facts and give you guys some additional thoughts. Now before we get into that, I am not a financial advisor. I'm just sharing information, giving you my thoughts and my opinions on that information. And just so you are aware, I do support Israel and their path to energy independence, and I do look forward to the day that Israel becomes the #1 exporter of energy in that region. And also that I have been a part of Zion Oil since 2017. I was there from beginning to end with MJ01. And I was there when they announced that MJ01 was not a viable well. So since then, I did everything that I could to learn about the oil business, oil production, and oil drilling. And more recently, over the last couple years, I've immersed myself in trying to learn how to become a good stock trader and learning different aspects of the stock market like shorting and fails to deliver, which in the past has had a major effect on Zion Oil and Gas. So many of you already know where I stand at with Zion Oil and Gas. I did share multiple videos in November and December about making sure you guys are putting in your stop losses. I did try to come up with a plan to fight the shorts, and basically the rest of the Zion Oil community rejected it, and you can see where the price is at now. And even going back to putting in your stop losses, there was a lot of people that before the shareholder meeting were investing in Zion Oil at 25 cents and 30 cents and 35 cents, and none of them put in their stop losses. So you can see where the price is at now, and because people didn't listen or they didn't care, well, they can't get upset about where the price of Zion Oil is at. Because if you would have had your stop losses in when it was at 35 cents and you would have had it in at 30 cents, at least you would have been able to go back in and buy more shares than you had before. All right, so let's go ahead and get into Zion Oil. Now, it's currently trading at 14 cents. And when the update came out, it was trading at 18 cents and it dropped down to 13.5 cents. And for the last couple of days, it's been trading between 14 and 15 cents. So I think that the stock itself, once we get through the updates, it actually has the potential to crash even further. I don't think a lot of people really understand the update, but people must know. And I don't advocate right now anybody investing in Zion Oil unless you know what you're doing and unless you put in stop losses. Because if this is not a viable well, you have to understand that it might be a couple more years before you see any type of return with anything you invest. So if you already don't have a lot of finances to work with, Zion Oil is not for you right now, right? I would rather invest my money into Luna Classic or some other cryptocurrency before I will actually put any money into Zion Oil. All right, so the update came out on Monday afternoon in the middle of the trading day, which to me was really weird, just for the simple fact that they always put their updates after the OTC markets close, right? Or on the weekends. So that was kind of weird to me, but we just found out a couple days ago that they still have not completed all the testing. So, but I do think, folks, that we are at a critical time. And I know that we've said that before, but because of Zion Oil's PR and the way they word things, and because there always seems to be delays, this time I know for sure, looking at the past information with MJ01 and looking at MJ02, that we are here. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the short information before I read the update. And there are still plenty of shares the shorters can use to short. And going back, looking at the short volume ratio today was very low, surprisingly. I think the shorts, once they realize the information that's in the update, I think they're going to pounce on Zion Oil. So there's always that potential that it could go down a lot further. Now, there is an issue with fails to deliver. For the most part, it's pretty normal since April. And there's 1.5 million that showed up on September the 1st. Now, these couldn't have happened on September the 1st just for the simple fact that the volume was only 1 million. So and the day before was only 1.5 million, the volume. So to have that many fails to deliver on one day is impossible. So this has to be either a mistake or a combination of months of fails to deliver. As you can see that the fails to deliver here hasn't had much of an impact. So maybe all these fails to deliver is just a combination of ones from months ago. Learning about shorts and how they work and fails to deliver, you know, they can keep pushing those further and further and further down the roads, right? But they should be covering starting tomorrow, right? If they haven't covered already. So you might see a slight bump tomorrow and throughout the rest of the week if they are being forced to cover those fails to deliver. All right, now, so before we get into the update, you know, you guys do have to know that I do have my own issues with ZNOG. I do support in what they're trying to do, and I don't always agree with how they do things like their public relations and some of the other things that have gone on, but I do support their objective and their goals. So here is the update. So dear ZNOG supporters and shareholders, as we enter the Jewish holiday season, we are encouraged by the results of our recent testing operations, particularly with respect to the lower of the two prospective zones we perforated near the final drill depth of the well. This lower zone, which is approximately 20 meters in thickness, is our primary zone of interest. Although we are encouraged, more work remains to be done, and we have no assurance the zone will produce hydrocarbons in commercial quantities or whether the well ultimately will prove to be successful. So they say that they're encouraged, but they're also letting you know here that there is no assurance that this zone is going to produce in commercial quantities. We are currently facing a downhole obstacle in the form of heavy water influx from the upper zone, inhibiting the potential flow from the lower zone. After consultation with outside experts, we plan to isolate and neutralize the heavy water influx by procuring a 4.5-inch packer and installing it below the heavy water zone and above our primary zone. But we have no assurance this procedure will be successful. So what they are saying right here is they have an issue with heavy water, and they have to install this packer. Now, a packer, when it's installed, it's going to reduce the amount of water coming through, since that is the major problem, right? But I'm going to go over what happened with the packers with MJ01, so you guys have a full understanding, because it says here that they have no assurance this procedure will be successful, right? Following the annual operation hiatus for the next few weeks of Jewish holidays, we plan to begin operations to install the packer and test the flow rate of our primary zone. Now, one of the things that does bother me is that they're letting everybody know they're basically on vacation, right? And that they still have to procure this 4.5-inch packer, which means that it's going to take time for it to come in. I don't know how long it's going to take to come in. Apparently, they think that it's going to come in maybe before the end of the holidays. So they say they plan to begin operations to install the packer and test the flow rate of our primary zone. That right there, when they install the packer, they should know within weeks whether or not if the packers are going to be able to do the job and they can move on. So hopefully the packers will work, right? If they don't work, then there's going to be a big problem. Then it just says we will continue to provide updates in accordance with good corporate practices and all legal requirements when we have definitive material news. We continually give thanks to God and our loyal shareholders and supporters who make all of this possible. Sincerely, Rob Dunn. To me, this is not necessarily a positive update. And one of the things is that you have to understand is that they have to drill a lot further down normally than most well operations. And it's going to be very important that these packers work. With MJ01, we did have some incidents with the packer. And this came on actually the same day that they announced that MJ01 was not a viable well. On August the 16th, 2018, it says here they announced that ZNOG confirms active petroleum system, which we kind of already knew that anyway. But in the same update, they told us that it was not a viable well. So just to reiterate that information, on that day, is the well commercially successful with the information that we have? and they said the answer is no. The drilling and testing on this well was much more costly than we expected, and as of today cannot be considered commercially successful. People have to pay attention to that because MJ02 has taken almost 2 years. So if it's taken this long, you have to expect that if they don't get a really high flow rate, that this is not going to be considered a commercially successful well. All right, so you have to know that. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the packers because this was an issue with MJ01. And I didn't realize this, because they didn't mention water originally in this update. So I'm not sure if it had to do with water or something else or just trying to get a better flow rate. But it says here that every time we wanted to isolate a particular zone to test, we had to install an isolation tool called a packer, which contains rubber elements. Due to the very high well temperature, these packers would only last on average approximately 5 days. When they failed, we had to pull the pipe out of the hole and replace the packer, which added on average 4 days. So every time they installed the packer, it would only last about 5 days. So this is going to be very important. And if they come across the same issue, they're basically going to deem this well not commercially viable. So you need the packers to work and you need a good oil flow. Now, according to this update, it says here the data confirms the well artificially flows at a rate of 90 to 110 barrels of fluid per day in the zone between 16,415 feet and 16,500 feet. So they weren't really getting a lot of oil from that well, right? So I don't know what their goal is, considering the amount of money that they've already spent on this well. They're going to need a miracle flow rate. Okay, folks, so you're aware of that and you can pray about it. And Zion Oil is really not telling you this, where they haven't made it super, super clear that this investment is a very long-term investment because they don't even have one well yet. Okay, so even if this is commercially viable, it's not like the stock is going to go up to $10, $20, $50, or even $100, as some people keep saying how high it's going to get with just one well. And people don't understand that if this well is commercially viable and the stock does go up, well, guess what? Zion Oil needs the money to continue operations, so they will be selling off more shares. And not only that, for people who have their sell limit orders in already, it's going to peak and come back down. So even if it peaks at $6, not everybody's going to be able to sell it off at $6. And so people have sell limit orders on the way up, and I can guarantee that out of the 40-something thousand people who are invested in Zion Oil are not going to be able to take advantage of $4 or more. And I do think that even if it is a viable well, that even if it does shoot up that high, it's eventually it will come back down, I think, to close to $1 or under $1. Now, one of the things that I do want to point out is that Zion Oil does have enough money to get through December 2022. So it says here, subject to the qualifications specified below, management believes that our existing cash balance coupled with anticipated proceeds under the DSPP will be sufficient to finance our plan of operations through December 2022. So currently, right now, they have enough money to get through until December of 2022, which means here pretty soon, before December, they're going to have to sell off a lot of stocks in order to continue operations. It says here, while we're drilling a well, the minimum expenditure is $2.5 million. In another section of the 10K, it says that when they are either drilling or testing, minimum costs are $2 to $3 million per month. All right, so if for any reason this is not deemed a viable well, they're going to need money for the next 6 months. So I pretty much would think that they would raise the money up before they come out with any type of negative news announcement. So when I compare MJ01 and MJ02 dealing with the packers, this is why I say we are at that point. Because with Zion Oil and Gas, I don't remember seeing, there was no mention of a packer before this particular update. So this tells me right here with MJ01 and MJ02, and when I compare dealing with the packers, that means that we are at the very end of this thing. Now, what are my expectations? So since we know that they are currently on vacation and that they had to order this packer, then that packer is probably going to take a couple of weeks. Who knows? It could take a month, you know, with the way things are going in Israel right now and all the virus restrictions. Who knows how long that's going to take? But let's say that it looks like, according to their own update, that they expect it to be there and be able to put it in after their operational hiatus. Following the annual operational hiatus, we plan to begin operations to install the packer and test the flow rate of our primary zone. So they're going to install the packer and test the flow rate. So we got about, let's just say, give it 3 weeks from their update. So let's just say between the 24th and the 30th, we should get an update at least telling us that they began operations with installing the packer. Then in the month of November, at some point, we should know whether or not if there's a viable well. All right, and they said that it was not guaranteed. There was no assurance that the procedure was going to be successful because of the depth of the well and because of the high temperatures. There's about an 80% chance that they are not going to have a viable well, because even if the packers work, they have to have a strong flow rate. And if they don't have that, it will also be deemed an unsuccessful well. So they have two obstacles. Now, hopefully the packers will not fail, and they also get a very good flow rate. And the flow rate has to be so very good, folks, because they said that MJ01 was not a viable well. They had spent a lot of money. And so that's exactly what happened with MJ02. I think there might be some issues coming up in the future because Israel is trying to go green, right? And their current government right now is not really for oil and gas. So even though that according to their exploratory license, that if they have a commercially viable well, it will automatically convert over to a production lease, but they might get a lot of resistance from people within inside the government. So this could be delayed, even if they find out that it's a commercially viable well. So there are all these different things to consider, folks, when you're investing in Zion Oil. And we may not know, folks, right now, whether or not if this is Zion Oil's time or not. Seeing the online comments is just absolutely insane. And this is why you don't put all your eggs in one basket. That was the mistake that I made before with Zion Oil. You've had very many opportunities to get out. You could have got out at 25 cents. You could have got out at 30 cents. You could have got out at 35 cents. You could have got out at 42 cents. Now, what I would be upset at is all the people that are encouraging people to buy at 30 cents and 35 cents and then watching it crash, because there's no strategy just to keep buying and buying and buying and trying their hardest to keep Zion Oil above 20 cents, which is absolutely mind-blowing. This is, again, I'm going to say this is a super long-term investment. And if you're looking for a short return, Zion Oil is not it. As we head into the rest of October, remember, they're on vacation. So I expect some type of smackdown from the shorts. Also, too, we have Saudi Arabia cutting production. So sometimes when the whole entire oil industry goes up, sometimes Zion Oil goes up with it too as well. Now, those fails to deliver, if they haven't covered already, should be covered in the next couple days. If not, then they probably put it off for a whole another month. I want people's hearts to be prepared either way that it goes. If you think that Zion Oil is going to go up, well then make sure you set up some sell orders. If you're not sure, then at least make sure you set up your stop loss orders. Well, but I do have a video coming that I will be doing at some point this week where I'm going over all the prophetic words, dreams and visions, as well as prophetic words dealing with Zion Oil and gas. So just because there's a prophetic word does not mean that it's Zion Oil's time. So I just want to make that clear. So anyways, folks, that's all that I have for today. I thank you guys for listening. God bless. TC out.